Hello! Just when you thought it was safe to turn on your computer again, we're back and we have the John Cleese interview. Our little friend is busy today and he's not able to come. What excuse do you possibly need to not go to a John Cleese interview? I'm not sure. Let's do this.
So here he is, Mr. John Cleese.
Yes.
I've nearly recovered after having a catheter up my willy for 5.5 weeks, which is no joke, I tell you. God does it to people who become too egotistical. He says, right, I'm going to humiliate you.
And you've been writing your one-man show whilst...
Well, I was trying to, but I've got to say my mental energy wasn't very high. I've got some material left over that I did a tour in New Zealand in 2005, and people said, why New Zealand? The answer was because it was as far off Broadway as you could get while staying on this planet. Do you see what I mean? Because you never read a review saying, Cleese show doesn't get very good review in Auckland. So you're safe that far away. And I ran some material in, some of which is quite good, and also my lovely daughter, who is 6 or 1.5, and a natural performer. She came and did some of the show with me too. So I'm using some of that material, and I've written a little bit more. But it's a very conventional show. It's just my life in comedy. But people like to hear about Fawlty Towers and the hotel that it was based on, and what it was like being with Python and who hated who, all that stuff. They actually enjoy it if they're fans. Only if they're fans, but if they're fans, that's a good show. So that's what I'm doing. I'm doing 7 shows in Norway.
Why no? Why is it?
Well,
is
it's almost as far off.
One of the great privileges in Toronto was seeing you. We came in early and watched you rehearse.
Well, that was a privilege.
It
was
Watch a
indeed,
living legend.
amazing.
Work trying not to fall over and remember its lines.
But it would
have been a thrill.
we
really
were
really
sat in the
was.
corner, and I think we had a few photos. But it was great to see how seriously you took kind of comedy, and we all kind of we agonise over, we rewrite and agonise over every kind of line, and knowing that how seriously you took every line, and then how you rewrote bits after one show, and it was fascinating to watch.
Isn't that nice? Good. Well, I mean, that's what it is, because people always think that it's a romp, and of course it's highly technical comedy. It always has been, always will be. And people say, what do you mean? I'll give a perfect example, and this is a very crude example. Hitting the car in Fawlty Towers. The first time that we tried that, I got a branch that was too rigid. Wasn't funny. Wasn't funny at all. I don't know why, it just wasn't. Then I got a branch that was much too floppy. Wasn't funny. Then I get a branch that's just the right degree of floppiness. It's hilarious. And it's a very good example. It's not just the idea, it's all about how it's executed.
And that sort of brings on to, in terms of like writing and performance, what do you sort of think is the more of the two processes? What do you think?
Well, writing is what I love, but of course then you go out and you perform it, because then you find out whether it's funny or not. Because it doesn't matter how many years you've been doing it, you never know what they're going to laugh at.
Do you enjoy going back to doing live?
Yes, but I only like going back for a bit, because I just want to do one really good performance and then forget it. You want to write it, and then you want to go in front of the audience and try it and get it. And then one day, when I was used to do the theatre 40 years ago, it was about 6 weeks into the show. You'd finally do the perfect performance. You get everything, every nuance, just one night, Thursday night, 6 weeks in. And then you go and you'd be really pleased that night. And you wake up in the morning and think, no, I got to do the fucking thing.
We've got kind of stupidly grand ambitions for television and film. Did you see Python's always kind of...
No, it was just television to start with, and we were all creatures of television. You see, I'd done the Frost Report, I'd done the 1948 show. Mike and Terry and Eric had written with Graham and me for the Frost Report, so we all knew each other. That was television, was where we wanted to be, and we all wanted to be in BBC. Because when people went to ITV, they got a lot more money, and the shows always went down. Nobody knew why, but that's what. So we just were working there for BBC, earning incredibly little. You know, I used to get 240 quid a show and another 60 or 70 for writing it. You know, the whole series, writing and performing for 8 months, I used to get £4,000, I think it was. And we were just living like good bank managers. But the point was, we knew it was good, and we knew that if we didn't stay with the BBC, it would get less good. So we were just happy to make the programs. And in fact, I realised that if I was ever going to have any real time to write something on spec, that I was going to have to get commercials, because if you could get a commercial as a result of doing a good TV show, that would buy you the time when you could just go away and write. Then when we started to think about movies, it was because an American, Victor Lowndes, who was running the Playboy Club, asked me for lunch, and he said, I love Python. He said, it'll never get American television. I said, I know, it's much too risky. Because in those days, American television incredibly conventional, so scared of doing anything slightly unusual. He said, if we make a little movie of the best stuff, we can put it into college cinemas. And there's 2,000 college cinemas. So we made the movie, and we were completely bewildered because it did very well in England. People went to the cinema to see sketches they'd already seen on television. We couldn't understand why. Meanwhile, in America, which was the whole point of making And Now for Something Completely Different, it was a total flop, because the people advertising it produced a poster with a big jolly snake on with a hat. See Monty Python. So all the people who might have gone to see it thought, oh, it's a kids' film. It took less money than they spent on prints and advertising. It was a disaster.
But I bet it's recouped that now.
Well, I don't think that film ever made any money. But the big change was when we went and did the Holy Grail, and we were still terrible at structure. I mean, we had no idea how to tell a story, which is the most interesting thing about movies. Which used to be ignored, and now there's people around who actually will write books about it and tell you about a guy called Robert McKee. If you haven't read his book Story, you should. But the most interesting thing is getting the story right, because if you have a great story, the film cannot miss. And if you don't have a good story, and most of the time people don't, then it doesn't matter how good everything else is, it'll never totally succeed. So Life of Brian was not a bad story. Not a bad story, but otherwise we were terrible at it.
Well, thank you so much. John Cleese, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, I'm John Cleese, and you are watching The Idiots of...